Welcome to this video on how to use the Formlabs 2 SLA resin printer in the cleanroom. We'll use a software called Preform. You can install that on your own computer, and it's also on the computer in the lab. If you install it on your own computer, you'll need to get the IP address from the printer so that you can send parts. You load your part just like any other 3D printing software. Once it's loaded, it shows up in the grid, and you've got to start thinking about support structures. There's an auto one-click print button that will generate auto supports. After generating auto supports, it will ask you to send the part to the printer. But in this case, we're going to do some editing of these supports just to give you a sense for what's possible. On the left hand side of the screen, there are menus that are much like any other 3D printer. You can scale the part, move it around. Because of the optics of this particular printer, it's generally best to keep this part kind of in the middle. And the orientation is quite different than you would normally run on an FDM printer, for example. You've got to think about where resin's going to hang and pool and flow, and you want to prevent resin from pooling in any spots because it'll build up there and you'll have a really rough surface. So you want to think about this thing dripping clean and any liquid falling off it. Here we're just moving some of the support contact points around. Sometimes you want to have those on a flat surface. It makes them easier to snip off with a pair of side cutters later. And obviously it needs to be well supported, but the exact location of these things can affect your overall print quality at the end. Often these little buttons will need to be sanded down, and so that's part of the post-processing and finishing of this part. Remember that this part is going to print upside down from how it appears now. That raft at the bottom is going to be attached to the build platform, which is at the top and lifts up out of the resin liquid. There are a lot of options here, and to get the best out of this printer, it's going to be worthwhile reading details on Formlabs' website and trying to understand all these options. On the right, though, you can see a preview of the layer by layer process that it's going to go through to generate this part. Once we're happy with this, on the right side, we've got some print validation marks, green ticks. If the system's got all those green marks, it's fairly happy. It gives you a rough print time. Print times are quite long with this machine, and they don't scale well with parts, so printing twice as many parts never takes twice as long as printing one part, because most of the time, as you'll see, is spent wiping and lifting and wiping and lifting and not actually running the laser. Once we're ready, we click Functional Red. It takes us to the job setup page. There you can see the printer. You can choose the resin material and the layer thickness. We haven't found much benefit in running layers thinner than 0.1 millimeter. It does take a long time even at 0.1 millimeters. Once you're ready, you can give the job a name and add it to the queue, and that will send it over the local area network to the printer. Once it's sent, we've got to head over to the printer, and we can click Print Now. It'll ask you to check a few things. Open the cartridge vent and check the build platform. Opening the cartridge vent is the top right there. There's a little valve that opens up on the side of the cartridge. And checking the build platform is kind of two things I think of. You've got this thing called, this is the tank at the bottom, and we need to make sure that there's nothing stuck on that tank. That's the window that the light comes through, and that wiper moves smoothly. And this is the build platform. We want to make sure that's clear and there's no debris on that. If all that checks out, we'll close the lid and we can start the print. At this point, the printer will heat up the resin and fill the tank. Those two steps can take a long time. They can take 5 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on how much resin has to be added and how much temperature has to be raised. Then the printing starts, and this is a time-lapse video of the first few layers. Those first layers will take a long time because it takes a long time to lift that build platform out of the tank. And you can see a little bit of a light there. That's the laser you see flashing away as it does its layers. And with this lovely effective time-lapse, we're going to be done very quickly. You can see the part now hanging from the build platform. This has taken almost 2 hours to make this part. When it's done, it'll lift that part. Opening the chamber, you can take the part out, but I wouldn't rush. We've got a bit of prep to do in the clean room fume hood before we'll do that. So we'll need some reusable isopropanol that we used for the first step of cleaning. We need some fresh isopro, and we need a isopropanol waste disposal bottle, plus a holder, a scraper, and a beaker that's the right size for your part. You can take the part out by unlatching the build platform, There's a lever there, and then you just pull it straight out. You want to make sure that it's not dripping anywhere. We do not want to get resin anywhere. The resin's really sticky. If anything's sticky in the lab, it needs to be cleaned with isopropyl alcohol or acetone. Acetone will damage a lot of plastic, so generally it's best to start with isopropyl unless you know what you're cleaning. We just pop the part off with that little scraper and put it into your dish. There's no need to clean the build platform as long as there's no debris on it. If there's debris, we need to get the debris off. But if the build platform just has resin on it, then it can just go back in the chamber without having to worry about anything. The key thing again is let's make sure we're not dripping resin on anything. And if you've got sticky hands, you need to clean them straight away. And any touch points, if they're sticky, then you've got a responsibility to clean that and keep everybody's hands clean. So sometimes it's almost inevitable that you'll get a little bit of sticky stuff on your fingers somewhere. So we're always just ready to clean a little bit of isopropyl on a cloth and clean your hands. And it just gets on things really easily if you're not careful. So again, we're going to clean the scraper that we just handled. We'll clean the handle first, and then we'll clean the tip. Generally clean the clean things first, and then use your cloth to clean the dirty things last. Anything that we're going to touch with our hands needs to be not sticky. The first wash, we'll use this bottle of reusable isopropyl alcohol. If it's really dirty, then we'll throw it out. But usually you can use the same isopropyl quite a few times for the first wash. So we're going to bury the part, like completely submerge the part in this stuff, and then it's going to go in the ultrasound for 5 minutes. The ultrasound's on the left side of the fume hood. Put it in. We don't need any temperature, so just keep that temperature as low as you can on the ultrasound. And the water level in the ultrasound needs to be up to about half to 2/3 of the way up. Once the part's finished in the ultrasound, we'll change the wash solvent. So we're going to put this solvent back into the reusable container. Again, if it's really cloudy, it can go into the waste bottle. But if it's not too bad, we'll put it back into the reusable container. Remember that isopropyl alcohol is a solvent. It's hazardous. We use it in the fume hood with the fume hood running, and we never put it down the drain. And now we'll add some fresh, clean isopropyl alcohol. It can come out of this bottle. If this bottle is empty, you can refill that bottle from the 2.5 or larger liter bottles that exist in the flammable cabinet storage cupboard behind you. Again, completely submerge the part in fresh isopropyl for the second rinse, and then this will go back in the ultrasound for another 5 minutes. Once the part comes out after its second rinse, we'll give the part a last little spray with some fresh isopropyl, and then we'll put the remaining solvent in the reusable solvent bottle. It's important to leave everything cleaner than when we found it. You'll notice at the beginning of those videos, those beakers were pretty dirty. So we're going to clean all the beakers that we used, make sure we clean the tweezers, we'll clean the counters, we'll make sure nothing's sticky. And with glassware, one of the best ways you can clean is just squirt it with a bit of acetone and wipe it with a cloth. That'll get rid of some of the cloudiness that was on those beakers to start with. Again, we're cleaning our hands again because this resin just has a knack for getting everywhere. So we have to be really vigilant about that. Happily, we can say that our print was a success, and if we're done in the fume hood, we'll shut it down. I wanted to show you an important feature, which is that this printer really needs to be level. You can check a digital level in this machine, and the blue dot should be towards the back middle, as we show here. If it's toward the front, resin can spill. Parts now need to be post-cured with a little bit of diffuse UV. A good way to do that is putting it near a window and letting it sit for a couple of hours. If it's outdoors, it can get too much UV and it'll warp. And then we're clipping it, pulling off the supports, and doing post-processing that needs to be done. And then we're done.